Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I'm joined by my co-host and producer, Holly Deschenes. Today, we are going to be getting into the permission to be seen and why you hide and how you come out of it. I think for a lot of people that are big feelers, being seen is a challenge. Generally, it's when you pick up on a lot of emotions and energy that can be overwhelming to the nervous system. And we develop all these survival strategies to be safe. A lot of times that can mean hiding, shutting down because that feels safer. It feels more calm. So we're going to go into why this is, why this happens, how we get through it. I think this is a big one for a lot of people. I think a lot of people have a desire to be out there more, but they don't trust. And things like criticism or having the spotlight on us, being successful, we tend to have these negative associations to that. It's easier to not have the attention, but that's that playing small that none of us really want to do. We've only adapted that way out of necessity usually. And so we're going to go a little bit deeper into this. So, do you have any first thoughts here, Holly?
I I would say this particular topic, I am definitely representative of someone who has a desire to be seen differently, but continues to shrink in a lot of ways. So I think it's a great topic. I think also we're kind of in an age where I've heard it called we're in an attention economy, right? One of the ways that you make it in various professions, particularly in the work I'm interested in, the work you do, is about being seen. You can't do it if you're unseen.
Mhm.
So I think that it couples in that too, that we've kind of had this shift overall societally. So yeah, I think it's a great topic. I'm excited to get into it more.
Yeah, to speak a little bit more on that, yeah, it is just, personal branding has been such a big thing as of late. I think people really want to get to know people at a deeper level to form that trust. And speaking back to my work with Coach Burt, he even, any business owner, like any person in any industry, he recommends that you do a podcast, you put yourself out there, engage with people. So even if you're just an executive in a company, he's still saying you should be, people need to know who you are because trust is a very important currency in the marketplace. I think we're at this point where a lot of people have been hustled and don't really have a lot of faith in people. And so authenticity is getting a lot more important. It's this ability to show up and not hide. We hide these aspects of ourselves because of shame generally and to protect ourselves. And that distorts our message, right? We don't come through clearly or authentically because we're trying to adjust how other people perceive us. And so my work here is to really dismantle the ego. And that means like these aspects of me that I'm hiding, that I've developed these strategies to basically manipulate my environment to get people to perceive me a certain way. It's about surrendering those things and just showing up naturally and just showing up real, which is it's quite a journey. We have to create the safety in the nervous system, and we do that by understanding ourselves at a deep level. And it's also about healing and forgiving the shame that we've felt, or it could be even guilt, things of that nature. And so eh, being visible is, it's one of those basic human needs, but we learn to reject that part, and it's because of the safety, right? So we all want to be seen, heard, respected, validated, all those things, right? And so a lot of us like to blend in, and that's why, I'm not a big like group think person or just everybody has to believe the same stuff because yeah, that's blending, that's hiding, that's safety, right? We're all individuals, we're unique, and I think it's a worthwhile journey to develop your own personal unique opinions and just really this thought process is that's separate from systems. I think it's important to just get into the meat of like really who you are and live your life from that because that's what's going to create the joy and happiness and fulfillment and all the things you want. We didn't really come here to blend in. We didn't come here to just be a version of somebody else. We admire the people that can stand out. They've gone through that journey to really get solid within themselves. And And yeah, when you start to get more visible, there is like criticism, opinion of others, judgment, those things can be big. And if we have jealousy and envy and too, those attacks can feel pretty painful. They could be loaded with a lot. So, there's very good reason why it's a difficult task. But we're just going to try and sort through it, get to the bottom of it, and give some tips on how to move forward. And with everything we do here, these aren't all or none ideas. We're not looking at overnight changes. It's to create the safety in your nervous system. It's about coming out of your shell over time. It's acknowledging and feeling the things that have made you want to hide, and then choosing differently, and seeing that those things may have held you back at one point, but we want to explore whether that's still valid or it still serves you at this stage in time. So when we're talking about permission to be seen, it is about going back to finding those reasons why you started hiding to begin with. And the only reason you would be doing that is because of some sort of pain and to protect yourself. And you know, children are always a good example of, they just play and have fun and they use their voice and they express themselves. And at a certain point, you generally learn that it's not okay to do those things, or you need to conform to certain ways of being. Earlier generations, it was definitely more the seen and not heard type stuff. Just being a good kid meant basically being silent and not heard. So those are all things that create this hiding, and it's through this lens of shame. If I'm expressing myself fully and somebody can't handle that, if it's too much, if they have all these stresses and pressures, and they're not okay with that, that's probably going to be met with resistance. There might be volatile emotions, there might be abuse behind that, there might be a lot of different things. When somebody's really suppressed themselves, and then you're seeing somebody that expresses themselves freely, that's good. That the bitterness and resentment and envy and things like that are going to start to spill out, where sometimes people want to crush that and silence that in you. There can be forms of abuse behind this too, that like led you to shutting down and hiding, which is like an important thing to note, where that's our number one priority is always survival and safety. If us expressing freely was in conflict with that, then we are going to adapt this way. So most of this work is about opening things up over time, and it is creating the safety, and it's updating our mindset to be in tune with how things are today. And yeah, it is a good test. When you, like I said, running a business and all these things, you do have posts on social media now. That's a requirement. And if you get the negative comments, like, what does that do to you? That's an important idea, where that might put you in that fight or flight. That might put you in this place of, I want to go back into hiding now. And so each time these things happen, it is about paying attention to what you feel, and that's a clue to what you believe about the situation. And freedom really is this idea of not fearing the judgments or opinions of others anymore. That's when you're truly free, is like when you can live your life on your own terms and you're not molding or conforming yourself in order to stay safe anymore. So this is a big one. We'll obviously continue to hit on this idea over and over again throughout the podcast, probably for the entirety of it, because it is one of those basic core wounds that many of us have. And so it needs a lot of attention, and there's many layers and levels to it. So yeah, we're just going to get into some of these initial, like, why this happens and then what to do about it from there. So anything else before we get started here, Holly?
No, no, I think that's great. I can think of, as we go through this, I can think of multiple personal examples, stories from childhood. Maybe we'll get into that. I don't know if you have some of those also, but I think there might be some ways to share some kind of specifics around how this happens, and then even if the stories are slightly different, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's just, so we all internalize things differently, and so we're all going to have different expressions of it. We may have different reasons why we shut down, but yeah, so I think the examples could be so broad with this category because it is so big, that it's ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're talking about why people settle in life, which is probably the most common thing there is, right? Status quo is just, yeah, I've surrendered all the things that I wanted to do or that like I thought were special about me in exchange for safety and security of just blending in and being a normal person. It's a big one. So first off, why we hide. This is a safety protection thing. We're picking up so much information from our environment. We're usually everyone's pretty sensitive as a kid. And if there's a lot of tension in the house, if there's a hypercritical parent where we're not able to make mistakes, if we made a mistake, we were judged harshly for that, right? Or punished harshly. That's those are all things that, yeah, I'd like kind of rather not be seen. This is also people like learn to lie this way too. Oh, wait, when I don't want to be seen, I don't want the attention on me because that means that's dangerous, right? So I might learn to twist words. I might learn to fabricate stories in order to maintain my safety too. We have this idea of maybe being too much. Let's say, yeah, I'm a kid and I just want to have fun, and the household's very serious. Maybe fun's not welcome. Maybe it's just a lot of survival thinking, trying to make ends meet. Everything's pretty intense. That tension in the household, that's the opposite of being free and playing, right? And so things may become very serious very quickly. This could be too loud, too sensitive. Like, yeah, let's say I feel emotions very intensely, and maybe even that might mean crying in situations quite often. And let's say I'm in a household where it's not okay to cry, right? That's another version of, okay, well, I have to hide this part of myself. That like I have to numb out. I can't be sensitive. I can't express myself freely. Kids are also a great mirror for adults where usually you see pretty accurately before you start to put all these filters on. So, you might say things spontaneously that trigger adults that make them insecure or question themselves, and there might be some backlash from that. It's not okay to say the truth anymore. It's not okay to speak up. It's not okay to like call things as I see them, right? So we develop all these ways to navigate these situations so that we don't get the punishment or the shame or the criticism. You know, Trauma response definitely right here. So visibility is a threat. So I'm either going to freeze or be submissive. Okay, so that means submissive is blending in. It's just like, okay, whatever the environment is, whatever the mood is, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna kind of put on my camouflage and blend in with that, right? Or it could just be complete shutdown too. It might be like, oh, like I get paralyzed because of the intensity of the environment where, yeah, I might want to hide. You have some extreme cases here where you actually had to hide and that was very linked to your survival, right? And so, these are all there's the smaller versions of maybe kind of the comments or the jabs being made to tell us to kind of shut down, that it's not okay to be ourselves. But then there could be the actual, this is a very threatening environment, and I do need to not be seen in order to be safe. And that's going to be more of that freeze response. And so the intensity of that is going to create a bigger resistance to being seen. So our nervous system, it's storing information based on the most stressful events in our life. So if something's like terrifying, that's that's considered more important than something that's frustrating, annoying, irritating. It's a greater magnitude, and so it's gonna be this bigger response in our body to be, yeah, I definitely don't want to be seen right now. And so that's why we got to go into that stuff if we want to come out of it. We have to we have to create that safety. We have to see that, hey, this situation is no longer in play. Or and maybe I'm in a relationship now that has some of the same rest ingredients where it just I don't need the big response. I might need smaller responses to work through it. I don't want to be paralyzed by it. I want to take it from being paralyzed to fawning to maybe stepping more into my power over time, right? So it's everything's this progression that we want to work with. Also cultural programming, societal norms. These are all deeply in our programming. Don't stand out too much because you might make other people feel uncomfortable or jealous or insecure, whatever that is. Yeah, you don't want to outshine people. Be humble. And I'm all for being humble, because that vulnerability piece gives us access to so much growth to be like, well, yeah, I don't know everything and I'm always learning. I'm always just work in progress. But there are moments where it's just like when I develop a strength, I need to be able to step into that fully. So, there's nuance to all this stuff of like an immature mindset is these like blanket beliefs that kind of cover everything. And when we get into nuance, now we start to be selective of this is the proper context to fully shine. This is the proper context to, maybe kind of sit back and just observe. We learn to navigate things in a way based on the context of the situation rather than just forming these blankets ideas that like this isn't okay, it's not safe. If I do start to really shine, and people are in this like suppressed mode, I might get some verbal abuse, some attacks, like there might be gossip, people might fabricate stories, tell lies about you, damage your reputation. There's a lot of things that can spring out of this. And that's why the journey is always just continue to get stronger and stronger and shed the aspects of yourself that gives that too much power where it shuts you down. Okay. Because I call it the gauntlet. Anytime you break out and you're like on your own path and you're stepping more and more into yourself, there's going to be this recognition in other people that have settled or shut down their lives. And that's going to make them feel bad about themselves. And they may be projecting that onto you, and that might come in the form of attack. It's a very common experience. And so just over time, we want to see it as like part of the process of like, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but like the stronger I get, the less those things affect me. So that's the key here is it's a journey you go through to care less and less about the criticism and the judgment of others. Because the truth is we're all very flawed people, right? We're all doing the best we can. We all have aspects where we're weak and maybe we struggle with. And so those are the aspects of us that are going to hurt the most. That's the part of our ego that gets really wounded is like when we're really struggling with something and somebody points that out, that makes us really want to hide. That makes us really shut down and we might get very defensive in that place too. It's the exposure piece. If the criticism hurts me, there's like some aspect of me that believes it or buys into it. And that's generally the stuff that's going to come from childhood. But as we grow, it's going to be, well, yeah, that really shuts me down, that really triggers me. Like those are going to be those unresolved issues from childhood generally that are popping up to the surface to be healed now that we're in this different phase where we can really grow through them. There's some kind of symptoms of hiding that can help us identify if we're doing that. And so one would be over explaining things. So if you feel like you need to over justify things to other people, you need to make excuses to other people. You see this commonly with like younger athletes where if they have a poor performance, they're looking for things to blame. They're looking for reasons why they didn't do well. And they're usually because they're seeking that approval from some sort of authority figure or adult. And so it kind of puts you in this ego of trying to protect yourself. And if we get too stuck there, we can really start to shut down. And it's just easier not to be under the microscope because this is like too painful. Anytime we're over explaining, it means there's a part of us that doesn't feel good enough and we feel like we owe somebody else an explanation because we're seeking their approval. Another one would be minimizing success. We may be very skilled at something, we might excel, but we're not having full ownership of that. We might be playing small in that area. Even if people are complimenting us, we might be downplaying it. We might be not wanting that attention. A deflecting praise is kind of what we would call that is like I'm not able to receive compliments because like I'm still operating out of this pain. I still have this thing where I don't really I want to express myself and so I've gotten really good at something, but then also I'm not fully on board with it. I'm still hiding, because if I'm still believing that being seen is going to cause me pain, I'm not going to own any of my success. I'm going to be basically trying to push that off, the attention off on somebody else. And another one's like staying in almost moments. So this is kind of being like, I never really crossed the finish line. Like everything is kind of in this workshop mode of like, I can't fully put it out there. I can't fully take the steps to make it a reality or to build it because I feel like there's still like all these pieces that I need to work on. And it's the perfectionism mentality where we're kind of fearing that criticism still. So it's like I can always be in the lab forever. That's a necessary stage. Like we need that to develop something, but the next phase of that is testing things out. It is putting things out there so that it can receive feedback, and that could be good or bad. The staying in the almost place is like we're not having full ownership because we're resisting the spotlight. because of the pain that it might bring. And so that's why it's so important to do this work is, a lot of times people don't have their breakthroughs because of this hiding piece, because they don't want the attention, they don't want the spotlight. Part of them deep down really wants it, but it's not safe. It's kind of being stuck in that mode of I'm only going to go so far. And then things might start to shut down or the wheels fall off or I sabotage. It's just because of what we associate on the other side of it. And what happens is we're actually, once again, we're still more attached to the pain of what could happen than our desire for success. So everything's this scale that we're trying to tip in the direction of like living our life fully. And that's why these things are a process is we have to come to terms with the things that we feel like we need to protect ourselves from. We have to create that the tipping point where we're just more attached to creating the desired outcome rather than staying safe. So that's why everything in this arena is related to this idea of risk is I'm putting myself out there in new ways continuously. As I do that, that feels uncomfortable. And then there's always going to be people that mirror back to me what I'm feeling. And so that might be in the form of criticism. I might view that criticism as my cue to like, oh yeah, I need to go back and hide again. But we actually just need to get stronger and stronger in that ability to receive criticism and basically connect more to self-belief and get stronger so that we're immune to the responses of others. Because we start to see it for what it really is, and it's like it's just really people's buried shame, to be honest with you. It's just them not living their life. It's all those things of they're seeing things in you that they don't want to see you successful because what does that mean about them and what does that mean about their choices? And so it's kind of this interesting dynamic, where we really that gauntlet is to strengthen you, but many people see that as the reason to shut back down and go back into hiding. And then that if we stay in hiding too long, now we lose that motivation and then we also start to settle more.
Yeah, all of that makes sense. I think there's a few things you said in there that are 100% true for me. You and I've talked about it in the past. When you talked about how it gets set up the way that it does in childhood, I have some really specific stories with a stepfather who was too serious, where it wasn't allowed to be fun and it had to be right. Then there's some like physical safety kind of stories as well. So I think all of that makes sense. And when we're thinking about this, I want the our listeners to be able to like get the takeaways and really see themselves where these things are happening for them.
Hmm.
And so even when you talked about not accepting praise, like I can think that's something that's generally pretty difficult for me. And the idea of I very much was taught of the be humble, you're not better than anybody else, there's nothing special about you, you're average. You can find all of those stories. I think all of that's great and excited to talk about like how we overcome that.
Just a few notes on that. So, no, maybe one that gets overlooked is sibling dynamics. We tend to put it all on our parents, but if you were raised with siblings, there's different jealousies that can happen. There's different things that can surface there. Let's say, one kid gets more attention than the other. You feel overlooked. And so then that starts to become part of your identity of like, oh, nobody sees me, nobody loves me, nobody gives me the attention. That's a version. Or if I was like shining and that made a sibling jealous and then that led to problems, that's another manifestation of that. So it's just kind of like anything where I don't feel like I can fully be myself without getting attacked in some way. These things they're very real concerns, and we all struggle with them on some level. I had three older brothers. It's like we're all competing for attention. Parents were divorced. You're wanting the praise, but then it's like also if the household's in survival, if the times are tough, there's a lot of tension and stress and there could be volatility like emotionally, right? Where it's anger, emotional abuse, physical abuse, things like that. It's just like, yeah, I can't shine here because otherwise that's really gonna that's gonna it, I'm just gonna if the spotlight's on me, that's just gonna mean I'm gonna get damaged over and over again in the wrong environment. You see this where it's like people like learn to tear each other down and like all that stuff because well, yeah, when you start to rise, it's clear that things are different. And so once again, that brings up a lot of insecurities within people. And there are some truths to it, being humble, like once again, I'm like all for it. And yeah, nobody is better than anybody else, okay? But we all have different strengths too, right? And we need that's our unique gifts are the things that we need to fully own and not feel bad about them. That doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else. It just means like, okay, I'm really strong in this area, and so it would serve me to develop that further and continue to grow in that, and that is going to be me shining in some way. But everybody has those aspects of themselves if they allow themselves to realize them. And so it's just kind of this comparison game is dangerous because, what are we actually comparing? I have a unique perspective that I've developed through all these things. That doesn't mean I'm better than somebody. It means like I found a passion that I really worked at. Somebody else has a different version of that, the thing that like fascinates them or interests them. And that's going to be their opportunity to really step up and shine and be visible is if they follow through with that. But the problem is many people don't meet that challenge. Many people have these gifts, but then they don't feel safe in them, or they don't build the confidence by working through the challenges associated with it. Then they just like shut it down. And then that's where the bitterness and resentment comes in, is because they didn't develop those areas, because we all have those. And so that the separators are about the work that you put into something. There's this like illusion of talent. So, well, yeah, talent's this like inclination towards something. And yeah, so you have a raw ability where you're kind of naturally pretty good at something, but that's a raw form. Like that needs to be developed. We need to work through that. We need to make it into a skill, something that you have confidence in. You might be naturally confident in something, but then as you follow that path, there's going to be trials and tribulations where you're going to doubt that confidence, where you're going to be like, oh, I thought I was good at this, but now I'm like, as you climb the ladder, you're faced with other people that are also really good at that too, right? Everything's this it is a ladder to climb, but it'd be like, oh, well, like if I want to take this to the next level, I need to dig in deeper and refine this even more and get some really hard confidence here. And so a lot of people don't want to put that work in, and then that's what just leaves them with bitterness and resentment and jealousy and envy and things like that, is because they didn't meet the call. And so they'd rather just kind of tear people down to validate their own journey.
So, through all of that, what do you see as the things that people lose out on or the costs for this decision to stay hidden or this feeling that they need to stay hidden?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be you set a lower bar for yourself, so your standard lowers, and then you kind of settle into what's comfortable. So it's going to be the loss of opportunity. So everything is this journey that we choose to take or not. And if we take everything has higher levels to it, so that's how I develop my skills. And so if I follow that path, like I'm going to get bigger and bigger opportunities in relationship to that. But if I don't do that, then my options are going to be pretty limited. I'm going to stay at a certain level for quite a while. And what's going to, there's no real judgment on that. People want different things out of life where, not everything's about career. It could be relationship. It could be, yeah, maybe I want to travel the world or something, and that's the most important thing for me. But where are you playing small? Where are you not meeting the challenges in your life? Is that good gauge? Because if I meet those challenges, like I get bigger and bigger opportunities. Another one's going to be leadership presence. Not everybody has a desire to be a leader either. That's fine. But I would really do some soul searching and be like, well, I think if you have one of these inclinations and you feel strongly about it, there may be this part of you that actually does want to be seen on a higher level, but you don't want to do that work to get there. I think anybody can eventually become a leader in something. And once again, this it doesn't always have to be career wise. It's that ability to stand strong in yourself and be fully seen by everybody, which I think is it's a very rewarding thing because you're taking massive responsibility in that place, and the skills you have to develop to hold that presence, I think can be very rewarding and fulfilling. And so I think that's kind of a, do you not want to be a leader because of the shame and the things we're talking about here, or is it because you just actually don't want that bigger responsibility, which is fair too. We want to find the right recipe for everybody. Another one could be intimacy, actually. So intimacy is this ability to like reveal yourself to other people. That is about being seen at increasingly deeper levels. We tend to see this in specifically in romantic relationships, but it could be in friendships. It could be any type of relationship where there may be aspects of ourselves that we're hiding, where we're not fully opening up to people. And so those relationships can't get any deeper. We're only going to be doing that because of shame. We're going to have some aspect of ourselves that we don't want to show other people because we fear what the judgment will be. This could be the struggles we're going through. This could be, well, and once again, it's like if I'm able to reveal these things, I'm also opening up the door for people to help me with the areas I struggle with. That's the vulnerability piece is like, well, I might the most common thing today is this like being super flaky and dating. I think right now, where I think a lot of people are in all these situations where they're struggling, mental health is not that great, emotions aren't that stable, financial pressures and stresses where maybe there is a lot of shame there, and so they're not moving forward in relationships because of all these things that they're afraid to show other people. So that's where you have like ghosting and not communicating effectively and sabotaging things, in order to not show that part of ourselves. Any good relationship, anything is going to be this increasingly revealing ourselves and going deeper and releasing the shame behind it, because ultimately we want somebody to accept us fully if we're going to be in a healthy relationship. And that's the good and the bad. When we open up the things we don't like about ourselves, now we have access to heal them and change them too, so we can actually improve upon those things, which is how we actually improve in a relationship. So this idea of shame, definitely a big thing in relationships, why we might not be making any progress there. Magnetism and how we resonate with other people. I guess you could talk about, maybe networking, something like that. You might be in a room full of strangers and that might be very uncomfortable. There might be some anxiety there. And so I might be in this mode of protecting myself when I'm really in this environment where it's designed to meet other people and open up and get to know people. I might not be revealing anything about myself, which doesn't allow me to create opportunities either, because I'm not showing who I am. I might have the solution to somebody's problem, but I can't talk about it because like I'm not showing that part. So that could shut down opportunities in that type of environment. And people being drawn to us, people are drawn to authenticity, you being comfortable with who you are and accepting who you are, putting yourself out there in these ways, especially in the marketplace. I do these specific things for people and I have to be able to communicate that effectively. So another one is this idea of kind of being at war with yourself too. It's this like kind of inner conflict of I want these things, but I'm afraid to show them. I'm afraid to put myself out there. It's this tug of war, this back and forth that's going on. When if we're able to work through things and move in the direction of our desires, that's what creates our happiness and fulfillment. But if I'm too locked into the pain or security, now I have all these regrets. I have all these things I'm not acting on. I have all these things where I feel stuck and I'm standing still. And that makes me increasingly more upset with myself. I feel like I'm not taking the steps. I might be saying I am, but there's part of me that's like knows that's a lie. Okay. So it's about being truthful with yourself of like if you really want things, I think it serves most people to really dig in and do the work necessary to move towards them, because otherwise we're just kind of in this autopilot of protecting ourselves and we get increasingly more reactive, and so we're not pursuing the life we want, and so that's where that resentment starts. We're not necessarily like fear being seen, we fear being misunderstood, we fear being rejected, we fear not being well received by others. So it's just kind of that the aspects we've buried in shame, those are going to be the aspects we're trying to hide. We feel like nobody's going to accept us for those. And so that's going to really stunt the growth in my life.
So I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, right? When I was like, well, I'm excited to hear how we work through this. So what does it look like for somebody to work through this, to come out of hiding or this fear of being seen?
As with anything with this work, I prefer like the gradual process. I'm a very process oriented person because we're taking into account so many of these factors of you may have just had some very traumatic, rough times in your life. And so too much too quick is going to overload our system and shut us down. To make progress, we want to take small steps. Generally, you kind of see it where somebody's like, I'm going to come out of my shell. And if they're used to hiding, now we're going to be like overcompensating. So we might mean that like, oh, I need to be like loud and obnoxious now, or I might need to cause scenes. I might need, it's kind of like we're taking that suppressed energy and we're channeling it into like overexpression. What we're trying to do is we're trying to refine these things to do them in a healthy way that's safe. And that's not because that's going to be a foreign thing to you too. Like if I'm overcompensating, that's not going to feel natural. That's also it's going to be built on the pain still. So it's not going to be in a clean way. You kind of see this in networking a lot where it's like people can be over the top about stuff. They can fabricate things or paint try to paint this illusion and you're just like, well, yeah, that doesn't feel authentic. Something's off here. And so we're trying to find this balance and so it is going to be about taking the steps, and it's going to be, so our nervous system tells us we're going to go into situations, and there's going to be part of us that contracts. It's going to shut down, and we're going to have negative thoughts. So like, and it's going to be self-doubt. It's going to be caring about what other people think. We're going to be imagining worst case scenarios. So we're going to be like fearing embarrassment. Our mind's going to go to these places of it's not safe. It's trying to protect us, and so it's giving us that feedback of like, okay, like if I take these steps, like really bad things are going to happen. And so that's why we take manageable steps. We take small steps. We encourage ourselves. We find other supportive people around us that maybe somebody that's an example for us that we've seen them take steps and grow over time. We start to maybe have conversations with them and see like what they went through. We're trying to conceptualize what coming out of our shell looks like. And sometimes, we need that example to see like, yeah, like how did this person get to the point where they're fully visible or visible most of the time? It's going to be about taking small steps in that direction. Once again, like with social media, it's like an easy bar to put yourself out there, just post something, right? You see how what comes up within you when you go to do that. What are you fearing? What's that inner dialogue look like? And we want to breathe through it. This is exposure. We expose ourselves to the stress, meaning I'm going to put myself in situations that I know I usually don't do well with, that I usually want to hide. And I'm just going to try and do a little bit better. But I'm going to go into it with the awareness of paying attention to my body, paying attention to my nervous system and what it's communicating to me. If I'm feeling anxiety, I'm gonna listen to that and I'm gonna breathe through it. And I'm just gonna tell myself it's okay. I'm just taking a small step. I'm putting myself out there a little bit more. You're not jumping on a stage and jumping off the cliff. It's just like I'm just gonna take little steps to talk to more people, to be a little bit more open, to reveal a little bit more about myself. I'm just going to start to come out of it softly. And that means like I'm making little adjustments that are about me being more authentic and me more open about what I really feel and think. If that's not accepted, then I'm probably going to need to go work on that afterwards. Like, let's say I do get rejected. Okay, so I'm going to have the shame come up in that place. Once again, dating is always a good example with these things. Yeah, like go talk to somebody and see what happens and or whatever and just see when I got rejected by this person, how did I feel? What stories was I telling myself? What happened to me when I got rejected? Because that's really the aspects of you you're rejecting yourself. That's what the shame is that's going to surface and we want to transform those stories. We want to journal about it. We want to become more conscious of our thought process when we go to do these things. Is it what's this reaction? What's the story I'm telling myself? Because we have to change the story. We have to change how we're seeing the situation and and we have to look to examples of what a better version is going to look like. We're trying to wrap our mind around what are some good steps for me to take, and I don't want to ask too much of myself too early because then I'm going to get buried and shut down. So small steps, try to imagine what it looks like. Coaching helps because we look at these things at a deep level. It's just, okay, yeah, I feel very ashamed of this, or I'm beating up on myself, I'm hypercritical. Usually those are just the mirrors of your childhood. Every time I went to go do this, I felt like somebody criticized me. Every time I put myself out there, I got rejected. It's just the different versions where what's coming up within you when you're not getting the result you want. Because if we're going to eventually get the result you want, you have to clear those things out. You have to build the confidence to have the follow through to continue on the journey. You have to step out of the almost and start to step into things and be like, I'm just going to keep working at this until I get it. It's always going to be around the things we have the deepest desires around. That's what's going to allow us to have the motivation to work through the challenges that are necessary for us to get there. And so we just try to figure out what part of me is holding me back here? What part of me feels like this isn't safe? We're questioning the emotional responses. We're questioning what we feel in those stressful moments. And and other people with this work, I constantly talk about it, they mirror things to us. So that means like they're going to be responding based on our expectation, and we have to adjust our expectation to get a better result. I have to expect better things are going to happen. And the way I do that is based on the feedback I'm receiving from other people. So if I'm not doing well with other people, yeah, I need to up level my social skills. Yeah, maybe I am coming off awkward. Maybe I'm closed off. Maybe I'm not continuing the conversation. Maybe I'm just giving people one word answers. These are all things that I think I need to protect myself, but it's also standing in the way of me getting to that next level which I desire. It's this ability to work through things, this ability to release the shame behind it, because that's what creates the stagnation. Is I feel like there's something wrong with me. Okay, there's never anything wrong with you. It's just the story you're telling yourself based on what's happened to you, and we can change that at any time. It just takes examining it. It just takes regulating those emotions, which means breathing into the tension and questioning it and letting it go and starting to formulate new responses.
So, do you have any personal examples or other examples that maybe can add a little bit more to help ground this idea for folks as they're listening?
I think a good example is recently just we've like up leveled social media presence, all that stuff. There's a stage where I'm like trying to figure out my message, and it's okay, I'm just going to commit to posting daily or whatever, 5 days a week. Now we're just going to put everything on camera. Now we're going to, all this stuff it is unfiltered. This is just me showing up and talking. But that's like me moving through the embarrassment and like, okay, I might not say everything perfectly. I might not, it might not go the way I want it to, or there might be people that don't receive it in the way that I intend. But that's all part of it, is like sorting through it. You're just trying new things out, like you're experimenting. You're inserting kind of this idea of play back into things, because at some point things got super serious, right? Where it's just like, oh, everything has to be perfect. And so it's actually like letting go of that idea that there is no perfect, and that you only actually get better by doing things. I need to put myself out there in new ways, whatever my focus is, dating, career, whatever. Like I need to be trying new things. I need to be working the puzzle. If I'm showing up the same way every day, that's probably going to get the same results. So I have to take small steps. And I'm a more of a kind of ramp things up type of person, where just over time you want to just increase the frequency. You want to do it more often, and then it becomes more and more comfortable over time. And then the doubt starts to silence, because you start to build all these experiences being like, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. Maybe my feelings got hurt for a second or two, but I got through. If you want to be more visible, like these are the things that are necessary. In relationship, it is about, as you progress in a relationship with a person, it's about revealing more aspects to yourself. In my own relationship, it's continuously, we have deeper and deeper conversations. We talk more and more about things that have happened to us. We talk more and more about the things we struggle with, rather than being, oh, I'm perfect and I don't have any struggle. It's about opening things up and being more real, because the shame is the only thing that, one, it cuts off the connection from other people, but two, it keeps us from taking the steps necessary to progress in any area of life. It's more about releasing the shame and seeing them as, I'm a human being. I have struggles just like everybody else. The more you're able to open up about stuff, like the more you can connect with people, right? And so it's seeing this, like, the consistency piece only happens when you start to stabilize emotions. So when I only do things here and there, now I'm amplifying each of those, the importance of each of those experiences, right? I'm building it up to be a big deal if I only do it like once a month or something. But if I make something into a daily practice, now I'm experiencing it on a regular basis. And that's where I start to build momentum, because I'm starting to see each time I put out myself out there in this new way, it gets easier and easier and easier. So that is the exposure piece. But then with the exposure piece, we're also wanting to unpack the things that still aren't working the way we want them to. So yeah, like I'm still having anxiety here. I'm still not getting the results I want. And that frustration is a clue that I still need to make some adjustments. And so each time we put ourselves out there, we're making adjustments. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. It doesn't usually mean we're like scrapping everything and trying something completely different all the time. It just means like I'm tinkering with things constantly to bring it to a better place because that smooths out the road where I'm making daily adjustments, I'm iterating, and eventually that gets stronger. I get more confident, it gets more clear. All these things start to happen from that place. It's taking the pressure off of it, being like our expectations are usually out of alignment, meaning like, oh, if I take this one step, it's going to change everything overnight. If it doesn't, then I'm going to be upset about it. So it's about adjusting our timeline to see that everything is a process, that I need to be playful with it, that I need to be curious about what's holding me back. I need to be curious about why I'm still hiding or, what my fears are. And as we confront those fears, we start to see that most of them we've outgrown a long time ago. It's just still stuck in our mind. We're still just seeing it in this immature place. And now that I've developed all these skills and I'm at this point, it's not really, I'm out of tune with reality. I'm delusional about where I'm at. Like, because you have all these things, but your mindset is still in an immature place. Okay, so we're just trying to bridge that gap and connect them. And then you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can totally do this. No problem. We left it in the fear place. We left it in the place where we didn't know what we were doing. And now we're still fearing embarrassment, or we're thinking we're not good enough, or we're thinking everybody's going to reject us. Like all these things are playing in the background. And so as we work with things, we start to see that most of that's not true. It's just lies we're telling ourselves. And they're lies because there's a disconnect of like, I'm actually like pretty far along here. I've put a lot of work into this. So like, why is my reality not mirroring that? It's because my mind is stuck in the past. And so all we're trying to do is free up the energy from the past to get you in sync with right now. And the person you are today can probably manage these things a lot better. That is probably a lot stronger than you think, that it's probably not this huge mountain to climb anymore. But I think career is a big one where it's just like it is a long road, but then it's just like there's points where it's just like, well, yeah, I have all this experience now, but why is my mind still in this place? You got to close that gap because that's what we talk about when we're embodying something. That means my mind and my body are like connected. It means like we're both on the same page here. And that's what makes me more powerful. That's what makes me more visible. That's what makes me more clear is when all the dots are starting to connect. And you see that in people. They have a presence about them. It's just like they're really present in this moment because their mind's not stuck in the past. So that's all we're trying to accomplish here is you're trying to close that gap. And in that place, it's like, yeah, those fears aren't valid anymore, so I don't have to live by them anymore. I'm not in the abusive household. I'm not in whatever, I'm not in high school, being bullied or something. All that stuff's in the past, but we still might be living as if it's going on today. And so that's the problem. And so to get more visible, we're just trying to close that gap to be like, well, yeah, like I do have a lot of confidence here. And that confidence is the visibility. It is just like I can own this piece where I'm no longer trying to hide because it's a strength of mine. We're not going to want to be super visible in our weakness, right? Because now we're going to feel super exposed, and then we're going to be in the ego and all the justifications and blaming and all that stuff. So it's just about like where am I equipped to shine right now? Because there's probably some area, but then where do I also want to shine? Where do I want to start to build that confidence? And that's where I need to start to take these steps. Because that's the thing, we all have different modes. It's not like you're going to be fully visible all the time. It's just going to be like, well, yeah, but I need to be visible in this area if I want to progress. So everything's context based, everything's nuanced. That's what we try to get to, that of like, what's the most important things for you to want to do this work? Because there are things that are holding you back, whether you're conscious of them or not. But as we meet them, we start to integrate, and in that integration, that's where we can really show up for ourselves and for other people.
Yeah. Awesome. So, love this conversation. I'm guessing, like many topics on this podcast, we'll be coming back to this one at some point. But if any of our listeners are like, this was something I want to work on, I'm interested in going deeper with you, Brandon, let's talk a little bit about like what are the different things that you got going on coming up and where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you would like to go deeper with me, you can schedule a strategy session on my website, brandonthelk.com. It's just 30 minutes where I get to know you a little bit better and share how I can help. Also, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website where every Monday I just kind of send out some tips and some reflections and then also what's going on in the business. We're talking about putting together a group event here soon. We're eyeing around mid-October, so be on the lookout for those details. So that'll be a chance to get some in-person work and share with the group and increase that vulnerability that we always talk about. So that we're looking to hold that in the Madison, Wisconsin area. So we'll be putting that out soon. Follow on all the socials. It's at Brandon Thelk or at bthelk on TikTok. Posting stuff daily. Would love to hear from you guys. Please like, subscribe, add some comments. Let us know things you want to hear about, ways that I can help. Always looking for ways to support you guys the best I can. So please let us know.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. If you enjoyed the podcast and you can think of somebody it's worth sharing with, we really appreciate any time the podcast gets shared. All the links for all the things will be in the show notes or in the description if you happen to be watching this on YouTube.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, talk to you later, Brandon.